Today we are talking about something most people never imagine will happen to them. How do you spot an emotionally dangerous partner before you are deeply attached? Because dangerous people rarely look dangerous at the beginning. They may seem thoughtful, attentive, emotionally available, and usually mature. They know how to make you feel seen, understood, and safe. That's what makes them difficult to recognize. Control can look like protectiveness. Possessiveness can feel like passion. Manipulation can sound like concern. And emotional dependency can be mistaken for chemistry. But attraction doesn't tell you whether it's safe or not. It only tells you that you are attracted. Safety reveals itself differently through consistency, respect, curiosity, and the way someone behaves when things don't go their way. Character doesn't live in perfect dates or romantic messages. It appears in dangerous moments, disappointments, agreements, boundaries, and ordinary life. So today, instead of giving you another endless list of red flags, we are giving you a framework you can use in any relationship. We'll talk about the early signs people often miss, why intelligent people stay in unhealthy relationships, and how to distinguish emotional danger from ordinary insecurity, and what to do when something begins to feel wrong. The goal isn't to make you suspicious of everyone, it's to help you let trust grow at the same speed as evidence. Welcome to Love Hack. Hello, everyone. This is Michaela. And today we're going to talk about those red flags that we never see. The ones when we start to realize that they are red flags, it's a little bit too late. So I think that one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they are dating is believing that the goal is to find someone who feels exciting. Excitement, yeah, I know it's wonderful. Chemistry matters too, of course. And obviously that attraction matters. But they didn't say it a lot, right? Because none of these things tell us whether we are safe or not, if we're emotionally safe or not. And that's where so many people get trapped because danger doesn't usually announce itself with an obvious warning signs. It doesn't arrive saying, "Hey, I'm going to manipulate you." It doesn't say, "Eventually, I will make you question yourself." It certainly doesn't say, "I'm going to slowly become the center of your entire emotional world." Instead, it will looks like the person you've been waiting for. Someone who texts you constantly, someone who seems incredibly interested in you, someone who says always the right things, someone who makes you feel the one, or someone who looks like it's almost too good to be true. And yes, sometimes they are. But one of the ideas we find while researching this episode really stood up at us. Danger often wears the costume of safety. Yeah, danger often wears the costume of safety. Think about that for a second. Danger often wears the costume of safety. Not because every charming person is dangerous, not because every emotionally expressive partner is manipulating you. But because people who want power usually understands that kindness earns access much faster than manipulation. Control really begins with control. It begins with trust. And trust is one of the most beautiful things we can experience. It's also one of the most vulnerable and valuable things we can lose. That's why this conversation isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone you meet, but we don't want you walking into every date looking for reasons to run away. Because you know what? That's exhausting. And honestly, it's not healthy either. Our goal here today is much simpler. We want to help you slow down long enough to see what's actually is happening. Because let me tell you something. There's a huge difference between someone making a mistake and someone revealing a pattern. There's a huge difference between insecurity and entitlement, between awkward communication and emotional manipulation, between genuine intimacy and accelerated attachment. Most dangerous relationships don't become dangerous overnight. They become dangerous because each small moment is easy to explain away. They were just stressed, maybe, or they've had a hard time, or they are afraid of losing me. They didn't mean it. Oh, but they apologized. Every explanation sounds reasonable on its own until months later, sadly, you realize you've spent more time explaining their behavior than observing it. And that's really what this episode is about. Observation, not assumption, not fantasy, not potential, but observation. Because healthy relationships don't ask you to ignore reality. They become safer the longer you know the person. You don't become more anxious. You don't feel like you are constantly trying to prevent the next argument. You're actually relaxed. You become more yourself. You stop performing. You stop walking on eggshells. That's why emotional safety feels like not perfection, not constant happiness, but safety. So, before we talk about red flags, before we talk about manipulation, before we talk about dangerous partners, we need to start with one question. How do you actually recognize emotional danger before you're deeply attached? Because once attachments become strong, objectivity becomes much harder. Our brain starts protecting the relationship instead of evaluating it. So we start to explaining, to justifying. We hope, we remember the best moments, we imagine the future, and slowly the reality becomes harder to hear than possibility. That's why the first framework we are going to talk about maybe be the one of the most useful tools you've ever learned. It doesn't ask whether someone is perfect, it asks something much more important. How do they handle power? And how do they handle reality? And how do they handle repair after they already hurt someone? Those three questions tells you more about someone's character than almost anything they can say. Some of the most dangerous people do not look dangerous at the beginning. They actually look attentive or protective or even emotionally intelligent and intense in a way that feels flattering. And because the beginning feels unusually powerful, many people assume the relationship is unusually special. But intensity is not the same thing as safety. Charm is not the same as character. What happens when someone doesn't get what they want? That question will tell you far more than asking how much they like you. And let me tell you why. One of the easiest ways to get overwhelmed in dating is trying to memorize hundreds and hundreds of red flags. And we have that little voice that says, don't ignore this behavior. Watch for that behavior. If they say this, if they do that, before long, you feel like you need a checklist every time you meet someone new. But what if there were a much simpler way to evaluate someone's character? Instead of memorizing dozens of warning signs, what if you only had to remember three words like power, reality, and repair? These three ideas give you a framework of understanding almost every relationship dynamic you will ever encounter. And let me explain you. And let's start with power. Power isn't about who earns more money. It isn't about who has the stronger personality. It's about what happens when one person wants something the other person doesn't. How do they respond when they don't get their way? Do they become curious or do they become controlling? Healthy people can tolerate frustration. I'm not saying that they enjoy frustration, but they can handle it. They don't enjoy hearing no because we don't like that. Nobody likes to hear no. Again, none of us do, but we respect it. An emotionally a safe person understands that love doesn't eliminate another person rights to choose. A controlling person actually sees your independence as an obstacle. They don't like obstacles. The first signs are often incredibly subtle. Maybe they push for exclusivity before you are ready to be an exclusive relationship. Maybe they expect constant communication. Maybe they become irritated when you spend time with your friends. And maybe they are they ask for access to your phone. They want to know your passwords, your location, and they want to know every single thing you do. And they will ask for proof or trust. And you know what? That's control. And you have to notice something. None of those behaviors sounds dramatic by themselves. Actually, who doesn't want to be with someone who is asking us um, our location just because in case something bad might happen? Is there a way to make us feel protected? But none of those as I said, behaviors sounds dramatic by themselves. And that's why they are so easy to explain and put something that explains how or why this person is using them. The question, the real question, isn't whether they ask, it's how they respond when you get your boundaries. When you set your boundaries, you know, you can tell this person, don't misunderstand me, but it's not about not trusting you, but I rather not share my password. Or when he is like, let's go out tonight, and you said, I'm so sorry, but I already have plans tonight. Or maybe I need some time to think. Or you know what? I'm sorry, but I'm not ready yet to be in an exclusive relationship. Those small moments reveal far more than grand romantic gesture ever will. Because boundaries reveal something that we call character. Someone's emotionally healthy may feel disappointed because you didn't give them what they asked. They may even ask questions, but they don't punish you for having limits. They don't make you feel bad. They won't guilt you. They don't pressure you. And, they don't make you feel selfish for proclaiming your independence or your space. So, a controlling person often reacts very differently. Suddenly, your boundary becomes evidence that you don't care enough about them, that you are hiding maybe something, and that's why you don't want to share your password. That maybe makes them feel that you are such a difficult person, that you are making them feel insecure just because you didn't want them to have your cell phone password. Have you noticed how quickly this conversation shifts? Instead of discussing the boundary, you are now defending your character. That's not an accident. It's shifting in the power. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I want to talk about the second part of the framework, reality. Reality is surprisingly simple. Can this person tolerate the truth? Not the truth they want to be the truth, but the truth. Not the truth they like, but the actual truth. Can can they hear that they hurt your feelings? Can they hear that you disagree with them? Can they hear that they made a mistake? Or does reality immediately become something negotiable? People who struggle with accountability often change the story instead of changing the behavior. It didn't happen like that. You are remembering things wrong. You are too sensitive. You are making a big deal out of nothing. And little by little, the conversation stops being about what happened and starts to becoming about whether your experience is even valid. And that kind of situation is exhausting. Because now you are no longer solving a problem together, you are defending your perception of reality. Healthy relationships don't require you to convince someone that your feelings exist, that your feelings are real. A healthy a healthy partner may remember events differently. That happens. Yes, it happens. But they are still interested in understanding your experience. They don't they don't automatically assume you are the problem. They try to understand, to get you, to figure it out. But now I want to talk about the third point, repair. Every relationship includes disappointment. Every relationship includes mistakes. And again, that's normal. The question isn't whether someone hurts you, the question is what they do next. Do they become curious? Do they apologize without conditions? Do they ask how to make it better? And most importantly, do they actually change? Because repair isn't a measure by words, it's a measured by behavior. Some people apologize beautifully, some of them cry, others they explain in a very beautiful way, others promise to change or promise something else, others might buy flowers. Maybe others are like, okay, let's go on vacation. They make grand declarations about how much you mean to them. And then, surprise, surprise, nothing changes. The same argument returns, the same behavior repeats itself, the same apology follows, but nothing changing. That's not repair. That's a cycle, guys. Real repair looks like less dramatic. It often sounds like something like this. You know, you're right. I didn't handle things that well. And you know what? I'm so sorry. Here's what I'm going to do differently the next time. And then they actually do it. You can see something changes. You know that this person is actually really sorry and is trying to fix things. Again and again and again, that's how trust is built. It's not built through perfect behavior, but it's built through consistent repair. When you remember these three questions, how do they handle power? How do they handle reality? And how do they handle repair? You'll stop getting distracted by charm alone, by how gorgeous this person is, on how handsome this person is, or how attractive this person is. Because I'm going to tell you something. Character isn't revealed by someone in his best day. It's revealed by what they do when things don't go their way. Now, I want you to remember that. Character isn't revealed by someone's best day. It's revealed by the way they handle things when things don't go their way. And now I'm going to tell you something that might surprise a lot of people. Some of the smartest, most of the Emotionally aware people, I still end up in unhealthy relationships. Yeah, even the smarter ones, even the most emotionally aware people still end up in unhealthy relationships. And it's not because they are naive or because they are weak, and certainly not because they are unintelligent. But believe me, it happens. In fact, many of them are incredibly perceptive. So why does it happen? Because our brain don't evaluate relationships like detectives. They evaluate them like human beings. And human beings are driven by hope, by attachment, by chemistry, by the desire to make something meaningful and make it work. You know, one of the biggest psychological traps is something called intermittent reinforcement. Think about a slot machine in a casino. You don't win every time. If you did, you wouldn't be exciting. If you never won, you would stop playing. The reward comes unpredictably. Sometimes you get affection, and sometimes you got distance with this person. Sometimes you will get warmth, and sometimes you will get silence. Sometimes you will get an incredible connection, but in other times, complete confusion. You know, it's oddly enough that inconstancy can make people become even more attached. Not less, because the brain starts chasing the return of the good moments, the good moments that you had together. Instead of asking, "Hmm, is this a relationship that I want? Is this relationship healthy?" Your brain, it start asking, how do I get us back to how we were last weekend? And that's the problem. Instead of asking the right questions, he wants to get back where the good moments are. So now you're no longer evaluating the relationship, you are managing it. And that's a big problem because it's a trap. And another trap is idealization. When we meet someone we really, really, really like, our brain naturally starts to fill in the blanks. We don't only see who they are, we also imagine who they could become. We picture the future with them, the trips that we'll make, the family that we might have or build, the conversations we'll have years from now. The potential is actually beautiful. But potential can also become dangerous because potential isn't reality. Someone's future is not the same as their current behavior. And relationships are live in the present, not in the future, not in the past, but in the present, not in a possibility. Another reason people stay in cognitive dissonance, that's because the discomfort we feel when reality conflicts with what we really believe. Imagine you spend months telling your friends how amazing someone is. You have introduced them to your family, you've arranged your life for them, you have changed a lot of things to make them happy, and now you discover that his behavior that doesn't fit the story you've been telling yourself. After you have done all that, change your life, introduce you to your family, now you discover that their behavior doesn't fit the story you've been telling yourself. God, now your brain has two choices to make. So, one of them is you have to change the story or explain a way for their behavior. Most of us choose the second option first. Not because we are irrational, because changing the story hurts. It hurts a lot. It means it means that we have to admit we were wrong and we don't like to be wrong. It means grieving the future we imagine and we don't want to go there because it's painful. It means that we have to start all over again. And that's painful. And once again, we don't want to feel pain. Another thing who can be a biggest trap, it's empathy. But why? Because empathy can mislead sometimes a person. Many caring people hear painful story and immediately want to help that person because they think they've just been hurt, or maybe they've never had anyone to love them properly, or if I'm patient enough, they will heal. You know, compassion, it's a beautiful quality. It is. I like compassionate people. But compassion without boundaries often becomes a self sacrifice. You can understand why a person or why someone behaves in certain way. But understanding doesn't mean you have to accept that behavior in your life. Understanding might explain the behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. Because if someone mistreats us, we can understand why because he has a past, but it doesn't mean that it's okay. Then, another thing, it's familiarity. Sometimes people mistake familiarity for compatibility, and we have talked about this in this podcast. If chaos feels familiar, calm can feel boring. Maybe because you grew up in a family where chaos was the normal standard. If unpredictability feels normal, constancy can feel suspicious. If you have spent years earning love, receiving healthy love may actually feel uncomfortable. That doesn't mean healthy love is wrong. It simply means your nervous system is recognizing something what it's not used to. Not necessarily something that is good for you. Because for him, someone who makes you feel like you have to chase for love means something that he knows, means something that he used to. But when someone is giving this love to you without you chasing it, for your brain, it's something that, hey, wait a moment, that's not normal. That's not something that people do. So it's suspicious. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong for you. And that's why we sometimes can feel afraid about the situation because we are not used to. And finally, I want to talk about hope. Hope is such a powerful thing. Hope is one of the strongest forces in any relationships. Hope says they will change, they are under pressure, this isn't who they really are. Things will get better at some point. Sometimes hope is justified. People do grow, people do heal, people do change. But here's the question that matters. Are you hoping because you are seeing consistent change? Or are you hoping instead of seeing it? Those are two completely different things. Real growth leaves evidence. It doesn't only leaves promises. Which bring us to one of the simplest relationship principles we've ever heard. We need to start to judge patterns, not promises. Judge impact, not intention. Judge today's behavior, not tomorrow's potential. Because people eventually become exactly who they repeatedly practice being. And that's the person you are actually building a relationship with. Let's talk about something that confuses a lot of people. If dangerous partners don't reveal themselves immediately, how are you supposed to know the difference between someone who is simply made a mistake and someone who isn't emotionally safe? The answer isn't to become suspicious about this person. The answer is to become observant. One conversation will really tell you everything. One disagreement won't tell you everything either. Character reveals itself over time, especially after something goes wrong. One of the healthiest things you can do is stop treating every early concern as either a green light or a red light. Instead, we should treat it like a yellow light. We need to slow down, guys. We need to take time. Don't speed up the relationship. Don't immediately end it either. Gather more information. Keep your routine. Keep seeing your friends. Keep your hobbies. Don't increase emotional dependence while you are still learning who this person is. You don't need to decide someone's entire character after one uncomfortable moment. But you also don't need to ignore it. Just, guys, observe it. Then talk about it. Choose one specific example, not 10, not 20, just one. Use simple language. When we made plans on Friday, you didn't tell me you weren't coming. That doesn't work for me, you know. If something changes, I appreciate you to send me a message. Then stop talking. This is the part of most people skip. They keep explaining, they keep defending, they keep convincing. But the explanation isn't the important part. The response is. because the response is a diagnosis. A healthy person usually becomes curious. They will take responsibility. They don't need 20 minutes to understand why it matters to you. They actually might say, "You're right. I should have told you. You know what? I'm so sorry. I'll make sure that it doesn't happen again." Then you watch. Not for one day, for several situations. Because change isn't proven by a single apology, it's proven by repeated behavior. Sometimes you will meet someone who isn't perfect, but who genuinely wants to improve. Maybe they become a little defensive at first. Maybe they need a few minutes to process. Maybe they don't respond perfectly, but they come back. They continue the conversation. They think about what you just said. And over the next few weeks, the behavior actually changes. That's someone who is capable of growth, guys. Growth isn't perfection. Growth is a movement. Now compare that to someone who isn't emotionally safe. Instead of showing some curiosity, you get minimization. Instead of receiving accountability, you might get blame. If you were if you weren't so sensitive, instead of repair, you get punishment. They become cold. They disappear. They start another argument. They threaten to leave. Or somehow you end up apologizing for something that you didn't do. Have you ever noticed something like that in your life? You bring something up, something that hurt you, and 20 minutes later, you are the one saying that you are sorry. That's not healthy conflict, guys. That's an emotional redirection. And eventually, you stop bringing things up at all. Not because the problem disappeared, because you've learned that honestly has consequences. And that's one of the clearest signs of emotional safety is disappearing. Here's another simple way to evaluate the relationship. Ask yourself 3 questions. Another 3. Do their actions consistently match their words? Do I generally feel calmer after spending time with them or more anxious? Do I feel more like myself or less? Those questions sounds almost very simple or too simple, but they are remarkably accurate. You know, guys, healthy relationships expand your life. They don't slowly reduce it. You don't become smaller. You don't become quieter. You don't become afraid of making mistakes. You become more comfortable being yourself. That's what security feels like. Not a constant excitement, not a constant reassurance. Freedom, just freedom. It feels like freedom.
Looking for real conversations about love, connection, and everything in between? Listen to Love Hacks. Honest, heartfelt, and in 4 languages: English, Espanol, Francais, and Portuguese. Find your version wherever you get your podcast. See you soon.
Another important reminder Guys, you don't have to collect endless evidence before taking yourself seriously. Sometimes people think maybe I need one more chance. Maybe I should wait. Maybe I'm overreacting. But if your body constantly feels unsafe, if you always managing another person's emotion, if you are editing yourself to avoid conflict, guys, you need to understand that those experiences matter. Your nervous system notice a pattern long before your logical mind is ready to admit them. That doesn't mean every uncomfortable feeling is a red flag. It does mean that your own experience deserves attention because healthy love should make you clear, not more confusing. The goal isn't to become someone who lives at at the first disagreement. The goal is to become someone who pays attention of the disagreement. That's where character lives. Not in a romance, not in chemistry, not in beautiful speeches, but in what someone repeatedly chooses to do after they've been given the opportunity to be better. Before we finish, there's one more idea we think is incredibly important. Because after listening to all this, some people might start wondering, so, how do I stay open to love without becoming paranoid? And I have to say, it's a fair question. The answer isn't to trust no one, and it isn't to trust everyone. It's to let trust grow at the same speed as evidence. Trust isn't something you owe another person, it's something they earn little by little, moment by moment, experience by experience. One of the biggest myths about love is that if someone feels right, you should simply surrender to your feeling. But feelings are information, they are not proof. Sometimes butterflies mean excitement, but sometimes they mean anxiety. Sometimes they mean attraction, but sometimes they also mean your nervous system recognizing something familiar. That's why feelings needs reality. And reality needs time. One of the healthiest dating habits you have to develop is allowing people to reveal themselves naturally. Don't rush to define the relationship before you've experienced disagreement. Don't rush to make life changing decisions before you've seen accountability. Don't rush to confuse consistency over 2 weeks with consistency over 6 months. Real intimacy isn't built by accelerating the timeline, it's built by surviving ordinary life together, like disappointment, stress, busy schedules, misunderstandings, and conflicts. Those moments tell you infinitely more than a perfect vacation together. Anyone can be wonderful during a honeymoon phase. Character appears when life becomes inconvenient, when they are tired, when they are frustrated, when they are told no, when they don't get exactly what they wanted. That's where emotionally safety either grows or disappears. We also want to say something to anyone listening who is realizing the ignore signs in the past relationship. Please don't turn this episode into another reason to criticize yourself. Most people don't ignore red flags because they are foolish. They ignore them because they are hopeful, because they believe people deserve grace, because they want love to work. Those aren't weakness. Those are beautiful qualities. The goal isn't to lose those qualities. The goal is to protect them. Compassion becomes healthier when it paired with discernment. Empathy becomes much healthier when it paired with boundaries. Hope becomes much healthier when it paired with evidence. You don't have to become cynical to be wiser. You simply have to stop asking one question: who could this person become? Before asking another one: who are they repeatedly showing me they really are? Because that's the relationship you are actually choosing, not the one you imagine, the one that's happening right now. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from today's conversation. Don't build a relationship around promises, build it around patterns. Don't measure love by intensity, measure it by consistency. Don't confuse attention with respect. Don't confuse chemistry with compatibility. Don't confuse vulnerability with accountability. And don't confuse someone's explanation of their behavior with change behavior. At the end of the day, emotional safety isn't loud, isn't dramatic. It doesn't constantly make you question where you stand. It doesn't require endless analysis. Real safety feels surprisingly ordinary. You can breathe, you can disagree, you can have boundaries. You can also make mistakes. You can be fully yourself. And the relationships become stronger because of those things, not weaker. If something truly cares about, if someone truly cares about building a life with you, they won't ask you to become smaller to make that happen, guys. They will make room for all of who you are. And they will continue to proving that, not with words, but with their action, because real safety never needs a costume. Giving enough time, giving enough time to this relationship, because when you do so, it always reveals itself. And if there's one thing we'd love you to remember after today's episode, is this: you don't have to predict the future to make good relationship decisions. You only have to pay attention to the present. Pay attention to how someone treats your boundaries. Pay attention to how they handle disappointment. Pay attention to whether they become more accountable over time or more defensive. Pay attention to whether you feel incredibly free or increasingly careful. Because healthy relationships don't require you to constantly question your own reality. They don't require you to earn basic respect. And they certainly do not require you to become someone else to keep the peace. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Please send this episode to someone who is dating, to someone who's starting over after a breakup, or to someone who keeps telling themselves, maybe I'm expecting too much. Wanting respect isn't expecting too much. Waiting consistency isn't expecting too much. Wanting emotional safety isn't expecting too much. Those guys aren't luxuries. They are the foundation of every healthy relationship. And remember, you don't need perfect instincts to make better choices. You need to slow down long enough to see what's actually there. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you are following Love Hacks, whatever you listen to your podcast. And if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, we'd really appreciate if you could share it with them. We get back the next week with another conversation to help you build healthier, happier, and most beautiful relationships. And I hope I will see you next week, Sky. Until then, and take care of yourself. And remember not to settle for a relationship that asks you to become less than who you are to keep it alive. Take care, and until next time. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.